Good evening, folks. We're going to talk today about a vision for the future. For the future of the United States, one that strengthens our economy and protects our national security at the same time. It's something that we've been talking about on the show a lot lately. The vision is built upon two what we consider to be bold ideas, but are kind of happening around the world. The first is the establishment of a sovereign wealth fund in the United States, which I've been pining about for some amount of time now. I'm sure you've seen it on the shows if you watch. And the second is something you also heard me talk a lot about, which is securing mining rights, both in the United States and abroad. Today we're going to talk mostly about in the U.S. So these concepts sound ambitious, and certainly they do and should include Congress in the decision-making process. You know, we're not that type of empire. We do want input from our legislators as you know, feckless as they can be. So around the world, sovereign wealth funds have been used to basically capitalize on the natural resources of a country. There's other ways to do it. There's other ways to get money into that, but that's the main way that's been done, particularly in Norway and in Saudi Arabia. We'll be talking about Norway today in just a few minutes. But at the same time, mostly it's been through oil revenue. Norway and Saudi Arabia, primarily oil revenue. The United States happens to be sitting on and requires quite a bit of rare earth minerals, cobalt, lithium, and then the one we're going to be talking about today, which is tungsten. And as we were in 2019, people forget this, but in 2019 we became net exporters of petroleum, which means we sent more out than we took in, and that is a money-making revenue stream for us, and we have to put that money somewhere. And as of now, it just goes into the Federal Reserve, and then we just print more money, right? Which is obviously not helping us. It's not getting invested in anything, and our debt now is our second largest expenditure. Actually, it may be our first now. It may actually be the largest expenditure above the Department of Defense now. Just not just the debt, but the interest on the debt, right? So we're in big trouble financially, and we're trying to find a way out of it, and there's no better time than now to start a sovereign wealth fund and to move into the 21st century finally. So first, we'll talk about the sovereign wealth fund and what it is, what the power is. So a sovereign wealth fund essentially is a national investment fund. Think of it that way. Think of it in the same way that your union pension invests in something, right? And you put all your money together and invest in that. It's kind of the same way. Typically financed by government revenue, that is to say, any kind of revenue that the government makes. So in this case, it would be oil revenue, and it would also be rare earth revenue. Again, countries like Norway, Singapore, even China has one. China's is okay, I guess, compared to the others. Norway's is the best. Saudi Arabia's second best. Singapore is actually not bad, especially considering the size. So there's no reason the U.S. shouldn't be doing this as well. We should be making our money make money for us instead of paying interest on debt. Currently, the U.S. has no such national investment vehicle. Instead of reinvesting Federal Reserve revenues into long-term assets, we rely on debt-driven spending. It's stupid. You know, imagine if instead of simply spending excess revenues on or borrowing against our future, we put a portion of our national wealth into an investment fund that could generate money for us now to pay down the debt, but also for future generations. And you see in countries like Kuwait, you see in Saudi Arabia and in Norway, individual citizens, instead of getting overtaxed in some of these places, are actually getting oil dividends, right? They're getting paid for this. It's not about bigger government, by the way. This has nothing to do with bigger government. Some people criticize, like, oh, you just want, you know, communism or the government to invest in stuff. Like, no, we accept the government must exist. You know, I don't like that. I would prefer it doesn't exist. But it does. So think about what a sovereign wealth fund, a well-managed one, can do for you. It reduces our reliance on debt. So this debt ceiling bullshit that happens every few years and shuts down everything in DC will become a thing of the past. It creates a sustainable resource of revenue. It invests in strategic industries that align with our national interests. And we'll talk about that more with tungsten here in a few minutes. And it ensures long-term economic stability by diversifying our financial assets. Norway's government pension fund, for example, started with oil revenues and is now at over $1.7 trillion with a T, trillion. Norway is a very small country and they have a $1.7 trillion wealth fund that is making them money every single day. It generates returns that help to fund public services without raising taxes. If Norway, with a population of, again, just 5 million people, that's how small it is, can achieve 1.7 trillion, imagine we could have in 10, 15 years, a $50 trillion fund that would, obviously that's a big number, but it's only about 40% higher than what our current debt is. Be clear about that. So it's easy to make money, it's easy to spend money. Let's figure out a way to use our money wisely. Now, let's go into just briefly the Norwegian Sovereign Wealth Fund. We'll talk a little bit about how that works. Okay, so Norway's Sovereign Wealth Fund, officially known as the Government Pension Fund Global, and there's some long Norwegian phrase for that I have no hope of pronouncing, is one of the world's largest sovereign wealth funds. It is the largest, actually. Here's some of the ways that they utilize theirs, and I want you to familiarize yourself with this because, as you know, Trump signed an executive order to get this moving, and it's going to become a thing at some point in the near future. And it's best that you all know exactly what's happening so you can have input on it. The first, let's look at some investment purposes. There's two primary, right? One is stabilization. The fund helps stabilize the economy by saving oil and rare earth mineral rights for future use, revenues rather for future use, reduces economic fluctuations. When you have money in the bank, volatile oil prices and stuff like that aren't a big deal. Savings for future generations is second. As I said, it saves wealth for future generations when Norway might not have oil revenues, right? What if it runs out? Now you've actually got the oil. We've turned into a country that spends faster than we create. And, if you're doing that in your personal life, you probably got a lot of credit card debt, to be honest, right? And it's not a great situation. Now, here's some investment strategy. And we see it, by the way. Saudi Arabia, I talked about this recently on the show if you paid attention about what Saudi Arabia's done. Here's some of the stuff that Norway's done. So they invest in stocks, bonds, real estate, renewable energy projects all over the globe. And that's the latter part, the renewable energy project, is to diversify because they've made so much money on energy, exporting energy, that they want to make more money, right, on whatever new technology comes. If it were me, I would be using nuclear because it's the cleanest form of energy, but Norway can do what it wants. Then there's equities. A significant portion is invested in equities from markets around the globe, including in the New York Stock Exchange, by the way. Fixed income bonds from various countries and sectors provide a balance to the equity investments. They invest in real estate. And again, renewable energy. Most recent investments include stakes in renewable energy projects globally. Then there's governance and management. How does it work internally? How does this operate? Because we're used to a Federal Reserve, and I don't think most Americans really don't know what it is, who it reports to. I mean, it's kind of an amalgamous blob that's controlling all of our money and printing it at a rate that's created 40-year record inflation. So governance and management in Norway goes like this. The Norway's Bank Investment Management, MBIM, the operational management of the fund is handled by this organization, which is basically reports to the Ministry of Finance in the same way that it should happen now. But if you've read anything about the Federal Reserve, you understand that they have power that they shouldn't have. There should be some kind of executive branch oversight of this. As you know, Jerome Powell's trying to resist being fired right now. Then there's ethical guidelines. The fund adheres to strict ethical guidelines, including investments in companies involved in activities that they like. They don't invest in things like tobacco or weapons or anything like that, and that's their prerogative, right? I mean, obviously, the U.S. can decide how it wants to handle that situation. The United States does send quite a few weapons overseas. We don't produce any weapons that I'm aware of as a government. I think it's mostly, if not entirely, through private companies like Boeing, Lockheed, General Dynamics, and stuff like that. But should we collect any revenue, whether it's excise, taxes, or tariffs or any stuff like that, that goes into the Sovereign Wealth Fund. And then there's the economic impact of this, right? Budgetary influence is a big one. While the fund doesn't directly finance the state budget, the state as in the government budget, it does contribute to the government's annual budget through fiscal rules that limit how much of the sovereign wealth money can be spent on certain things, right? So people, you might be thinking, well, they're just going to tax us the same amount and then collect this sovereign wealth fund money and start new programs and spend it on that. Technically, that's possible, but only if we don't write the rules correctly, right? The rules should be written as such that this money is narrowly defined for this particular activity, and you can't use it as a congressional slush fund. And then there's currency management as well, as I mentioned before. The fund's investments affect the Norwegian kroner value, right? So think about it this way. When you talk about net worth of an individual, you have debits and credits. The debits would be all the things that you owe, right? Or the liabilities would be the things you owe. Debits are stuff coming out of your account, and the credits are stuff that you have that are coming in, and then your assets are the things that you have that are already in there. The more assets you have and your asset to liability ratio being higher makes your value, your net value better, and it'll make the net value of the US dollar better as well. Now, a quick word on what a U.S. sovereign wealth fund might look like. It could be seeded from oil revenue. In 2019, again, we became a net exporter of oil. But we also have quite a bit of rare earth minerals in this country, and you're going to be shocked in a few minutes when I tell you how little we're mining that. Those are the two major things that we need to do. Rebuild America's domestic supply chain for we talk about energy, I would say manufacturing as well, but we're just going to talk about energy and minerals today. But certainly for energy, right? Energy is national security. Energy security is national security. Put that in your brain and believe it, because that is true. Then, develop alternative resources for this stuff. Instead of relying solely on mining, for example, we should maybe invest in material recycling as well. A lot of this stuff happens in Africa, but cobalt and lithium can be hard to find sometimes. And if there's ways for us to recycle those products here domestically and get those rare earth minerals out of it before we ship them overseas, that's probably a good idea as well. And then, all of this comes back to securing our national interests. The most important thing we can do is not be reliant on other countries, right? We don't have to care, for example, if China is all over Africa, or if China is trying to invade this place or influence that place, if we have everything we need right here at home. And that's what we're going to get into now with a vision of the future, and how tungsten especially might be something that can help. I had to check and double check this following fact. How in the world has the US government allowed itself to be this ignorant of the risk and dangers to our national security? There are no producing mines of a very critical and crucial rare earth metal on US soil. It's the one with the highest melt point, tungsten. You may have heard of it. It's a 100% imported from other countries, and we use it in all sorts of stuff in the military. And where do we get 27% of it? From China, our only real military adversary. Oh man, tungsten's unique characteristics make it indispensable in modern industrial and technological and defense applications. If you haven't heard of it or know what it is, I'll give you some examples. If you're in the military and you've used AP round, armor piercing rounds, the core material is tungsten. Same thing with the AP ordnance shells. The density and hardness allow it to penetrate tank armor and reinforce structures, bunker busters, etc. Tungsten is used in a lot of advanced composite armor for military vehicles as well, due to its ability to absorb and dissipate kinetic energy. It's very tough. For decades now, globalization has blinded politicians, and the Chinese have become the dominators of rare earth mineral mining, not just tungsten, but everything. I believe that there's never been a better time for American-based tungsten stocks. American Tungsten, which is US, you can find on the exchange, US DEMRF, which should become the first tungsten producer on US soil after decades of no mining, decades of not mining this material that we need for our military, is a sponsor of today's video, and I believe that you must research it as soon as possible. You really need to know about this stuff. So the United States faces a critical vulnerability, and its dependence on China for rare earth minerals. In the due diligence that I conducted, I found that rare earths are used in all kinds of indispensable items. You know about it. Your phone, the phone that I'm recording this on right now, the battery, if you drive an EV, electric vehicle, the battery in your car. China achieved control of 70% of global rare earth production, 70%, and 85 to 90% of the processing capacity. So you're turning those minerals into something that you can actually use. And they have now created a global strategic chokehold. It's beyond me. It's crazy how we've allowed this to happen. The dominance is not accidental. They've done it on purpose, and it's hard to believe that we've allowed it accidentally. I mean, I don't imply malice where incompetence will suffice, but this is one of the worst things I think I've seen. Over decades, China has strategically invested in mining, refining, exporting rare earth minerals while undercutting competitors with lower costs, forcing many U.S. operations to shut down all over the globe. It's all over Africa right now. They're even trying to push their way into South America, which you know I've been talking about for years, getting down there. So the U.S. now has only one operational rare earth mine. It's in Mountain Pass, California, and it relies on China to refine the materials that come out of it. Are you kidding me? But it doesn't mine tungsten. As a matter of fact, nobody does. And any geopolitical crisis, China could weaponize this dominance against us. And it is signaled as such in the past. We're threatening them with tariffs. What if they just shut down rare earth mining for us? We can't make batteries anymore. I mean, that's unacceptable, right? Transitioning to domestic production is slow and costly, leaving the U.S. highly exposed. So this rare earth dependency risk becomes a national security issue. I mean, of unparalleled magnitude. We get into a war with China today, they cut off our supply. That cannot happen. There are no producing tungsten mines on U.S. soil. So what, a couple of months through the war with China, we run out of armor-piercing rounds. We can't destroy their tanks anymore. I mean, it cannot happen like this. So American Tungsten seeks to become the first tungsten producer on U.S. soil. Again, that's American Tungsten. It's U.S. DEMRF, Delta Echo Mike Romeo Foxtrot, is advancing a significant North American past-producing mine in a region with minimal environmental and regulation barriers compared to overseas competitors. So there's not going to be all these startup costs and waits and permits and environmental impact and all this other stuff that you would if you were starting a fresh mine. The company's flagship asset used to be the 5th largest operational tungsten mine in the USA, right? Which is a huge mine. And the company plans to put it back into production, and what's incredible is that the market cap is $12 million today, and the historical high-grade mine drilling results when compared with other developers who are racing to be first movers are much more compelling in an IMA mine. I don't know if there's another mineral or metal that's so essential to the Department of Energy and to our country than tungsten. And the U.S. produces none of it. They don't produce any. Importing by the boatload from China. And I could be, a shareholder in the first mover that's actually going to mine it again and invest in our national security. America first. The U.S. Department of Energy classifies tungsten as a critical material, recognizing its strategic importance to national security, clean energy, and high-tech industries. Don't forget about weapons, right? I want to bring it back to that every single time. Tungsten has the highest melting point of any metal, 3,400 degrees Celsius, right? It's extremely dense, extremely hard. These characteristics, some of you may have wedding bands made out of it. A lot of dudes get their wedding bands made out of it actually because it's almost impossible to scratch because of those reasons. So you know how strong this stuff is. These characteristics make it indispensable for applications that require high heat resistance, durability, strength, whatever. Think military. I mean, that's all that I keep thinking about. So do your homework on American Tungsten, US DEMRF. Go look it up, check it out, see if, I really familiarize yourself with this because we're going to be talking about it more in the coming weeks. I'm going to be talking about this quite a bit. Right now, again, the market cap is 12 million. There's no other companies even trying to do this. This is a chance to get on the ground floor of this stuff in a place where some of the heavy lifting, again, with the permitting, the environmental stuff has already been done. Think about the potential. 0 operational mines in U.S. soil. China's already made export bans a thing, and Trump has signed an executive order to start a sovereign wealth fund and to start strategic rare earth mineral mining.
We have to bring production back to our country. There was a time when we made 1 ship a day, and now we can't build a ship. We don't know what the hell we're doing. It's all gone to other locations and other lands. And to further return production to the United States, we're going to environmentally free up our rare earth minerals.
So the company will soon begin discussions to secure strategic partnerships and non-dilutive financing with the U.S. Department of Defense and Department of Energy to get this stuff and put it into the hands of the DOE and the DOD who need it. Peer companies are trading at market caps at 25 million right now, and American Tungsten is only 12. Just saying. So it's just beginning its journey. Once again, it's DEMRF, American Tungsten. Go look it up, check it out. Hit us in the comments and let us know what you think.